العظيم حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي جعل الحمد مفتاحا لذكره وسببا للمزيد من فضله ودليلا على آلائه وعظمته ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على النبي الأمي المكي المدني الهاشمي الذي سمي في السماوات بأحمد وفي الأراضين بأبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الهداة المهديين سيما أولهم أمير المؤمنين وآخرهم بقية الله في الأراضين روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء ورحمة الله على محبيهم ومواليهم وشيعتهم أجمعين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم ملعونين أما بعد. For the happiness of Hazrat Zahra Marziyah, for the enlightenment of the graves of Yawm al-Marhumin, of the graves of the Shuhada, Ulama and Siddiqeen, for the safety of the followers of Ahlul Bayt around the world, and for the safety and the hastening of the reappearance of Hazrat Baqiyatullah al-A'zam, Arwahun al-Fida, please recite your loudest salawat. All praise due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who is Rahman and the one who is Rahim. The Insaan-ul-Kaamil is that entity who all of existence is under his control. But even though possessing all of those sifat, he is still a makhlooq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's very important to understand this distinction. Even though all of these sifat are gathered within the wujud of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, they are still the makhlooq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there are three terms that we need to understand. The first is dun Allah, ma'allah and 'indallah. The first two, if one holds the aqidah of these first two, that is shirk. The third is the acceptable. Dun Allah, if we say Ahlul Bayt are dun Allah, without Allah, they possess their power bidhat, this is shirk. Because they draw directly from the source of Allah. If we say that they are ma'allah, this again is shirk because it takes us from the vertical existence to a horizontal plane where we say they are at the same level as Allah. And this again is shirk. But 'indallah is that everything they have and everything that is at their disposal is given to them by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And should Allah choose to take it away because He is wajibul wujud and they are mumkinul wujud, He can do so. But the position that they hold is such that all of ikhtiyar, all of that power has been given to them over every single atom through the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything they did and everything they said was based upon a command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hence why we refer to them as da'i ilallah, those that called towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we said yesterday that the Insaan-ul-Kaamil, when all of those sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gather and manifest within the wujud, then that is when he becomes wajhullah, lisanullah, aynullah, All of these sifat, because every action of his is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Marhum Ayatollah al-Uzama Sayyid Abdul Hadi al-Shirazi was one of the Maraja of Iraq. He died in around 1962. And he would, at the end of Adhan and Iqamah, just before he would recite Takbiratul Ihram of his Salah, he would always say, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah, and then do the Takbir. So some people came and they asked him, they said that you are a Marja' Taqleed. Who is saying this? Surely is there a hadith about it? Is there some dalil for it? Why is it that you're saying? What is your evidence for saying this? He says, I don't have any dalil, there's no hadith for this, but it is the fact that Hussein alayhi salam is the foundation of this namaz. Had Hussein alayhi salam not gone to Karbala, there would be no namaz. Not just no namaz, there would be no Islam, because Sayyid al-Shuhada himself says, وَعَلَى الْإِسْلَامُ السَّلَامُ, that if someone like Yazid is in charge of this nation, then you can recite the Fatiha of Islam. Imam alayhi salam occupies that position, that the very institution of the religion is saved by Sayyid al-Shuhada and his stance. The whole concept and the idea of religion is saved. Shaykh Mohsin Naqvi puts it beautifully. He says, Tawheed ki chahat hai to phir karbo bala chal, warna ye kali khul ke khili hai na khilegi. Tawheed na masjid mein na masjid ki safon mein, Tawheed tujhe shabbir ke sajde mein milegi. So if you want to understand Tawheed, that final sajda of Imam al-Hussein, Ilahi ridam biradaq wa tasliman li amri, la ma'bud as-siwak, ya ghiyath al-mustaghithin. Filled with Tawheed, drowned in the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, covered with wounds over his body, lost all his loved ones, but yet his head in sajda towards Allah. Ilahi radam biradak, my Lord, I am happy within which there is your happiness. Wa tasliman li amri, and I have submitted to your command. La ma'bud as-siwak, I find none worthy of worship but you. Ya ghiyath al-mustaghithin, O the one that hears the cries of the one that calls out. They became the foundation and the saviors of the deen itself. This love that has brought you here is a tawfiq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The love of Hussein alayhi salam is something that doesn't even look at religion. The love of Hussein alayhi salam transcends cultures. It is this beacon that draws people towards him. This love that has brought you here, this is a tawfiq min Allah. This is an opportunity from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. An opportunity that not many were given. Even those in Karbala, some that were with Sayyid al-Shuhada, that had meetings with Imam al-Hussein, they weren't given tawfiq to remain in Karbala with him. There were those that left him in Mecca, those that didn't join him in Medina, those that along the way didn't join him. But then there is an individual that left Imam at the time of Zuhr. Zahaq ibn Abdullah al-Mishraki is an individual that the Imam met along the way. Imam said, come with me, this is my mission. He said to the Imam, Yabna Rasulillah, I'll go with you on one condition. If the battle is going in your favor, I will remain. But if I realize that the battle is not going in your favor, you will not hold it against me and you'll give me permission to leave. Imam al-Hussein says, that's fine, come. He comes, Ashura day, the Imam alayhi salam, all his companions are going out one by one. After all the companions had been killed, Zahaq ibn Abdullah comes to Imam al-Hussein. Says, Yabna Rasulillah, do you remember the promise that you made me? Says, this battle you cannot win. Imam says, I remember the promise. Says, do you give me permission to leave? Imam says, go. He already has a tent, he already has a horse prepared in the tent. He runs, he rides his horse. Imam says to him, but remember one thing. Ride away as fast as you can, so that you don't hear the calls of me saying, Hal min nasirin yansuruna. And he rides away. This was his tawfiq. Only up until this point, he wasn't able to become shaheed at the side of the Imam. And then he was one of the narrators of many of the things that happened in Karbala up until that point. He went and he told a lot of people. But the tawfiq of shahadat was not given to him. If it's not too much trouble, if I could ask everyone to move forward, it'll stop everyone from hopping over people's heads. Please, come forward, recite aloud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. We have been looking at the sifat, the characteristics of Insaan-ul-Kaamil, in order to try and inculcate those characteristics within ourselves. And for the last 2 days, we looked at the characteristic of humbleness, of tawadu'. And today I want to look at another one, and that is the one of afw, of forgiveness. Afw in a hadith, when you look at it, it's referred to as Taj Kiramat, the crown of magnanimity. The individual that can forgive. It is as if he has topped off all of these moral characteristics with the most beautiful crown, the ability to forgive. And we have numerous traditions from the Imams where, for example, Amir al-Mu'mineen in Hikmah number 211, he says, وَالْعَفْوُ زَكَاةُ الظَّفَرِ. He says, forgiveness is the tax of success. When a person reaches a point of success or a point of victory, the tax of that victory is that he must forgive those whom he has been victorious over. It's a very difficult maqam to reach. It's easy to say, yeah, I can forgive, but really can I? In the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He addresses the believers. And this is at the time of the hijrah of the Prophet. The Prophet has made the hijrah. Now the remaining believers are wanting to leave, some of the companions. But their wives and their children are stopping them from going. Are saying, no, you'll get killed, don't go to Medina, they'll kill you along the way. And they're stopping them. And so this ayah comes down. Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu. Inna min azwajikum wa awladikum aduwwan lakum fahdharuhum. Says that, oh you who believe, some of your wives and some of your children are your enemies. So be wary of them. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues, says, وَإِن تَعْفُوا وَتَصْفَحُوا وَتَغْفِرُوا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. But if you can pardon them, be patient with them, and then forgive them, then know that Allah is the oft forgiving. There are 3 things in this ayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. Ta'fu, the first is just to forgive. Tasfahu is now above that. It is that not only have I forgiven, but I don't bring it up again. You know, sometimes we forgive someone, and then whenever we get into an argument with them, we're like, do you remember that time? This is why. You're like, well, I thought you'd forgiven me for that. But it comes back up. The believers are being told, forgive, forget. And then, تغفروا. تغفروا, remove it from your mind. Forget about it. It never even happened. And that's the hard part. That when you truly forgive someone, it is as if nothing ever happened. And that is the height of that forgiveness. That is that Taj Karamat. That can you let go of everything that a person has done to you for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam became a prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered him towards three things. He says, upon my bi'that, Allah said to me to do three things. Said the first, khuzil af, make sure you forgive. Wa'amur bil urf, and then teach them. Wa'a'rid anil jahilin, and ignore the juhala, the ignorant ones. To try and forgive those people who have been calling you Sa'ir and Majnoon and have been calling you all sorts of names, have stoned you, have attacked you. To be able to forgive, not just forgive, but now do good to them in return, to teach them, to save them from eternal damnation. It's a very difficult maqam to be at. But it is the maqam that the awliya of Allah are at. If anyone hopes to achieve any sort of maqam spiritually, they must have this ability within themselves to forgive and forget. I can't forgive the person that asked me 3 Muharrams ago to move forward, or the person that came and sat in my seat 5 Muharrams ago. How dare he? Forget all the high level things that people do against me. I'm so attached to a seat, I'm so attached to a particular place. But that is a discussion for another time. There are 3 places where we find in narrations that you must forgive unconditionally. And all 3 of them refer to a person's own zat, to a person's own individual person. When someone does something to you. The first place is when someone does something accidentally to you. Yeah? You know, they're trying to come to the front of the majlis, for example, they're hopping over everyone's head and they kick you in the head. It's an accident. Didn't really mean to kick you in the head, but you know, it happens. So it says here, unconditionally forgive it. It was an accident. Let it go. And for most of us, that's like, yeah, of course. But for some people, they don't want to let it go. Some people will hold on to something as simple as that because they're so diseased within their own souls, because they're so consumed by their own narcissism. Something even as small as that, they won't let go. Someone does something accidentally. You know, one day, Imam al-Sajjad salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi, he's sitting at the dinner table and the servant girl was pouring water for the Imam. And as she lifted the jug slipped out of her hand and struck the head of the Imam. And the head of the Imam began to bleed. Imam looked towards her and she straight away began to recite the ayah of the Holy Quran, وَكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ. and those who swallow their anger. And the Imam looked at her and said, I've swallowed my anger. She said, وَعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ, said, and they forgive the people. And the Imam says, I've forgiven you. And then she completes the ayah, Wallahu yuhibbul muhsineen, and Allah loves those who do ihsan, who do good. Imam says, go, I have freed you in the way of Allah. See, not just forgive, not just forget, but then reply with good. That is the height of af. That someone wrongs you, you not only forgive them, but reply with doing something good. When the women of Ahlul Bayt reached back to Medina following their incarceration and their imprisonment in Sham, and as they reached outside of Medina, there was a man from Sham, from amongst the Shamis, that was sent alongside them to make sure that they reached Medina. When they reached outside of Medina, Sayyidah Zainab went to all of the women and she said, look, do you have anything, all the jewelry and things that was looted and was returned to us, if you have anything, give it. And so they all began to give whatever little they had. She gathered it, she went to Imam al-Sajjad, and she said, Sajjad, go and give it to this man who accompanied us along the way. This Shami that came with us along the way. He was good with us. Imam al-Sajjad went and he gave it to him. He said, my aunt Zainab has sent this for you as a thank you. He says, no, I don't want it. Imam says, no, this is a hadiyah from us. This is a gift from us, Ahlul Bayt. The man sits on the ground, begins to cry. He says, what is this family? Who is this family? And what did we do to them? That even despite all of the dhulm that we did, they only replied with good to us. It's the height of af, the height of forgiveness. So the first place is when someone accidentally does something. Forgive, forget, move on. The second place where you must unconditionally forgive is when someone wrongs you intentionally, but then asks for forgiveness. Asks for forgiveness. When Imam al-Hadi salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, was ordered to go to Samarra, and all of the guards had come to Medina and they had taken the Imam forcefully from his home and had put him onto this ride to be taken out. A man came over smiling and he said to Imam al-Hadi, I was the one that reported you. Says, I told Mutawakkil that you were gathering all of these arms. And then he says to the Imam, and you dare go and tell Mutawakkil that I did this to you, I will make sure that I burn down the gardens of all of your friends and blind them and take out their eyes and blind them. Imam al-Hadi looks at him. He says, I don't need to complain to the makhluk. I don't need to complain to the creation. I complained to someone far greater yesterday. And he says, who? He says, I took my complaint to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When he said, I took and I complained to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this man began to shake out of fear. Straight away he says to the Imam, Imam, forgive me. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have reported you. Please forgive me. The Imam looks at him and says, go, we've forgiven you. Imagine Imam al-Hadi being forced to leave Medina, forcefully taken from his home because of this individual, false reporting that he had given to Mutawakkil. But Imam says, it's fine. He asked for forgiveness. I've forgiven him. In the heat of the battle of the day of Ashura, a man by the name of Tamim ibn Kuhtaba al-Shami comes out into the battlefield and he calls out, is there anyone that will fight me? Sayyid al-Shuhada himself goes out to fight in that particular skirmish. Imam al-Hussein goes out, fights this individual, he strikes him on the leg with his sword, cutting off his leg. This man falls to the ground and he calls out, he says, Hussein, I'm sorry, forgive me. Forgive me, don't kill me. Imam looks at him, says, would you like it if I asked your tribesmen to come and collect you? He says, yes. So Imam al-Hussein calls out, says, this man's tribesmen, come, take him back. And they come out and they carry him out of the battlefield. The af of the Imam. So many examples in Karbala. So many individuals that came to the door of Hussein alayhi salam. Those that had wronged him. But he, salamullah alayhi, forgave all of them. One of them is a man by the name of Yazid ibn Ziyad al-Muhasir al-Kindi, famously known as Abu Sha'tha. Abu Sha'tha was part of the army of Amr ibn Sa'd. These are individuals that we don't usually hear about. He was part of the army of Amr ibn Sa'd. In one of the khutbahs that Sayyid al-Shuhada delivered, his heart changed. He said that, what are we doing? He got up and he left and came to Imam al-Hussein. He asked for forgiveness. The Imam forgave him. Not just forgave him. When he went out to fight, he first rode out on a horseback. And his rajas, the poem that he was reciting, the line was, I am the one that has left the army of Ibn Sa'd and have come under the wilayat of Hussein ibn Ali. He rides out, they begin attacking him, his horse is injured, he's thrown off the horse. He makes his way back towards Sayyid al-Shuhada, but now stands squarely in front of the Imam and takes a knee and defends the Imam. He was an expert archer. He had 100 arrows, and all 100 he sat in front of the Imam and fired his arrows to defend the Imam. And there Sayyid al-Shuhada does a dua for him. He says, Allahumma saddid ramayta, Allah make his arrows accurate. وَجَعَلْ ثَوَابَهُ الْجَنَّةِ, and give him the thawab of Jannah. This is an individual who, that was there all the way when the water is cut, when Imam al-Hussein is stopped, all the time he is there. But yet when he comes here with Sayyid al-Shuhada, Imam is saying, make his arrows accurate, grant him Jannah. He fires 100 arrows. The narration say 95 of them hit and kill one of the enemy combatants. 95 are killed at his hand. Eventually he goes out and he is killed. And in Ziyarat Nahiya of our Imam, he is mentioned by name. He's mentioned by name. There are only few shuhada in there that are mentioned by name. Abu Sha'tha is one of them. But Abu Sha'tha was still early. Abu al-Hutuf and his brother Sa'd al-Ghaffari. Abu al-Hutuf al-Ghaffari and Sa'd al-Ghaffari. Two brothers that were there against Sayyid al-Shuhada. No, not just against Imam al-Hussein. They were in the army of Amir al-Mu'mineen in Siffin. They broke away with the Khawarij. They went to Nahrawan. They committed the atrocities in Nahrawan. Amir al-Mu'mineen went and fought the battle of Nahrawan, the bloodiest battle of the Imamat of the Imam, where from the tens of thousands of Khawarij that were there, only a handful remained. These two were from amongst them. Fast forward the day of Ashura. Abbas is gone, Ali Asghar is gone, nobody's left. Nobody's left. These two look at each other and say, what have we done? What have we done? They both ride towards Imam al-Hussein. Yabna Rasulillah, we were the ones that watched as your Akbar was killed. We were the ones that laughed as your Abbas fell. We stood by and watched your 6-month-old killed by an arrow. Yabna Rasulillah, we were happy that the water was cut off from you. Yabna Rasulillah, Hali min tawbah? Is there any chance that we can be forgiven? Imam al-Hussein says, now that you have come to Hussein, all is forgiven. All is forgiven. Go. And they turn and they ride out. And they fight and they are killed in the battle of Karbala alongside Abu Abdullah. And today their names are inscribed upon the Darih in Karbala. How Kareem is Hussein alayhi salam. Imagine if you just go towards Imam al-Hussein with a pure heart. See what it is Hussein alayhi salam can do for you. The place where someone has wronged you, but you choose to forgive them because they ask for that forgiveness. The third time to forgive is where you forgive in the hope of guiding someone. And you find it in the life of Imam al-Hasan. The Shami comes, swears at the Imam. The Imam says, my brother, it seems that you're not from around here. Do you need somewhere to stay? We can provide you with housing. Do you need somewhere, something to eat, clothing? We can provide all of this to you. Guides him with that love. Fath Makkah, the Holy Prophet, all of these individuals that had oppressed him, all of these individuals that had called him names, that had boycotted him, but yet he addresses all of them, says, all of you are freed. All of you are freed. And many came to the Haqq, forgiving people for the sake of their guidance is the third place. But there are two places where you cannot forgive. The first, or three places. The first is when where your own izzah is being attacked, where a mu'min is being humiliated. At that point is not the place for a person to forgive. When a person is humiliated, then at that point there isn't a turn the other cheek. There isn't forgiveness there. Why? Because the izzah of the mu'min is greater than the sanctity of the Kaaba itself. The narration says that the sanctity of the honor of the believer is more than the sanctity of the Kaaba. If it is between tearing down the personality of a believer or tearing down the house of God, says you can tear down the house of God, but you cannot tear down the personality of a believer. Day in and day out, we judge people. Day in and day out, we say things about people, not knowing whether they're true or not. Humiliate people in various ways, shapes. Make fun of other believers. Humiliate them. Some poor soul happens to fall asleep in the majlis. Everyone takes photos of him. And then we forward it around all our friends. Look at this person, he fell asleep. This is destroying the izzah of the mu'min. Spread rumors about people. All of this is humiliating a believer. And at that point, when it comes to the humiliation, when it was Hakam ibn al-As, who was the father of Marwan Mal'un. Hakam ibn al-As is that individual that after Fath Makkah, he would come in front of the Holy Prophet and he would run behind the Holy Prophet and lift up his clothes and laugh and joke around the Prophet. And the Prophet ignored him a couple of times, and then he'd keep on coming. He'd lift the abba of the Prophet and throw it over his head and just laugh and run around. The Holy Prophet ignored it. Then one day he comes in front of the Holy Prophet and he starts making funny faces to try and get other people to laugh at the Prophet. And the Holy Prophet just looks at him and says, "May your face stay like that. May your walk remain like this." And from that point on, Hakam ibn al-As's face was stuck in that position, and he walked for the rest of his life in that funny way. When it comes to humiliation, the Holy Prophet is rahmatan lil alameen, but humiliation of a believer is something that cannot be forgiven. The second is when the laws of the deen are being broken. There's no looking the other way. The deen and the laws of the religion are the most important. There's no, oh, well, it's okay. Najashi was the poet of Amirul Mu'mineen. He was the poet. Everywhere Ali alayhi salam would go, Najashi would write poems about Amirul Mu'mineen. He would recite them. One day Najashi, on the way to Salatul Jama'ah in the month of Ramadan, he meets an old friend from the period of Jahiliyyah. May Allah save us from bad friends. Many a person will be dragged to hell because of their friends. The Holy Quran says people will be being pulled to hell and they'll call out, "Oh, woe unto me. Lam attakhid fulanan khalila." How I wish I hadn't taken that person to be my friend. Because of my friend today, I'm being dragged to hell. He sees his friend says, "Where are you going, Najashi?" He says, "I'm going to pray Salatul Jama'ah in the masjid behind Amirul Mu'mineen." He says, "There's plenty of time. Come, it's been a while, come to my house." So he takes him home, sits him down, and he brings out food. Najashi says, "I'm fasting, it's Shahr Ramadan." Says to him, "Najashi, leave these things. Allah is not that such a tyrant that He will oppress you for eating a little thing. Just eat. Allah is merciful. Allah loves everyone." Nowadays we've got that new age Islam of, hey, everything is love, and that sort of hippie Islam that we have. Everyone's pushing around now. Yeah, it's all about love. No. There's hell as well, yeah? Ain't no love in hell. Trust me. So Najashi is there and he's like, "Oh, look, Allah loves you. Why don't you have some?" I don't know if he sounded like a hippie, but Send to me. And Najashi says, "I guess one bite won't hurt." Yeah? So he eats. And then he carries on eating until he's full. Then he's sitting there and his friend says, "You know what? Old time's sake." He goes out and he brings out a bottle of alcohol, puts it down. Let's have a tipple for old time's sake. Don't know if you guys say tipple here, but... So Najashi's like, no. Najashi, come on. Allah isn't that strict. He's like, "You know what? I broke my fast. It's Shahr Ramadan. Whatever." So he drinks. Yeah? He drinks the alcohol. Remember where he was going. Sees a friend. And where does he end up? So now he drinks. fully drunk. He comes out of the house, he's walking through the streets drunk and singing and doing all sorts. They grab him and they bring him to Amirul-Mu'mineen. This is your poet Najashi, drunk in the holy month of Ramadan. The Amirul-Mu'mineen says tomorrow he will be punished 50 whips, 50 lashes. Some for breaking his fast, another for drinking alcohol. It's fine. He's put in prison for the night. The family of Najashi come to Amirul Mu'mineen. Say, Ya Ali, Najashi, he messed up a little bit. You know, he loves you still. He loves you still. Ya Ali, look, he messed up. He still recites, your poems. He does all of this stuff. He still loves you. Just let him off this time. Just let him go. Amir al-Mu'mineen looks towards them and says, I cannot change the hudud of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What the boundaries that have been set by God are the boundaries that have been set by God. I cannot change them. The next day, they say, Amir al-Mu'mineen, if you give him these lashes, he will leave you and join Muawiyah. Amir al-Mu'mineen says he can go and join whoever he wants. These are the hudud of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They cannot be broken. They bring Najashi, the lashes are administered, he runs straight to Sham. Muawiyah sees him, says, Najashi, where are you coming from? Says Muawiyah, I have fled from the adala, from the justice of Ali ibn Abi Talib to seek sanctuary in your dhulm, in your oppression. There is no forgiveness when it comes to the hudud of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in terms of the religion. We start overlooking things. Oh no, it's okay. He's on his journey. Yeah, I know she doesn't observe hijab, but it's okay. I didn't really enforce it on my children. I didn't really, it's fine. No. Yawm al-Qiyamah, they'll be like, okay, Bismillah, along with them into hell. You didn't teach them. It's fine. Many children will be put into hell, and as they're being dragged to hell, so you didn't pray, you didn't fast, you didn't observe hijab in the dunya. So hell is your abode. So, and they'll complain, say, Ya Allah, it's not our fault. So what do you mean? Says our parents didn't enforce it upon us. Our parents didn't tell us the importance of it. Our parents didn't show us how to observe these religious observations, these hudud of yours. The order comes, where are the parents? With them as well. In you go. Whole family reunion in hell. This is the reality. Some people might get offended, and I forgot actually at the start of this series to give you my usual disclaimer that I will end up offending you ultimately within this series at some point. But no better time than now, I guess. Recite the salawat. So when the laws of the religion are broken, there is no two ways about it. When one is a fasiq, it's fasiq. Yes, we can't say in terms of the mu'min that he is a fasiq in his ruh. But yes, fasiqul amal, certainly we can say about that. The hadith says that you can't call a mu'min a fasiq. A fasiq is the one that openly sins. And we don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of what exactly is open sinning, because there's going to be a lot of offended people. But so when it comes to like adala and all of these things, when a person does something that is openly haram, that is fisq. For example, shaving of the beard, right? We know that although we may not have a hadith that says it's wajib to grow a beard, but we have multiple hadith that say it's haram to pass a razor over the beard line. Yeah? And then some have interpreted, and then the fuqaha interpret it in a different way. But then this would now be called an open sin. It's the truth, it's the reality. The hudud of Allah cannot be changed. No matter how much we move to whatever Western country and whatever we want to do and change our shorten our names from Muhammad to Mo and H to whatever, you know, the rules of God are the rules of God. And that's the reality. And the sooner we realize this, the sooner we will be ready for the reappearance. But the more and more we water down this religion, the emptier our Husayniyas will become. And the more further away from the deen our generations will become. And the hearts will become darker and darker until there is no connection left with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the second place where there can be no forgiveness of sin is when the hudud of the religion, the boundaries of the religion are being broken. The third place where there is no forgiveness is when a person is insistent upon their action. They're insistent upon their sin, they're insistent upon doing something bad to you. They do it once, they do it twice, but they are insisting on doing it. At that point, there is no need for forgiveness. Because they're insistent. When Sayyid al-Shuhada was digging the trench, so you know that how the tents were, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam dug a trench around the back of the tents so that no one could attack from behind. He dug the trench, he filled it with firewood and set fire to that trench on the day of Ashura. As the Imam did this, there was a man by the name of Abdullah ibn Hawza that was watching. He looked towards Imam al-Hussein, he was from the army of Amr ibn Sa'd. He says to him, Hussein, are you that eager to go to hell that you have created for yourself a hell here? Worry not, soon we'll send you to hell. Imam looks towards him, says, what is his name? They say Abdullah ibn Hawza. Imam raises his hands, Allahumma huzhu bin nar. Oh Allah, burn him in the fire. At that moment, his horse rears up and throws him into that very trench that the Imam had built, and he burns alive and dies. But the stubbornness of the army of Amr ibn Sa'd, this is an army who, even when reality was presented to them, they chose not to follow it. A person next to Abdullah ibn Hawza, seeing this, looks at Imam al-Hussein and says, Hussein, that wasn't because of your dua. That was just a fluke. Look how blind they were. How blind they were to that reality. They didn't want to accept it. See, those that made it with Imam al-Hussein, those that today that you name your children after, those that you are mutawassil towards the Imam, those individuals were those that put aside their arrogance. They put aside their own opinions about the religion, about things, how society was. And they put their full trust in the Imam and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as a result of it, they became immortal. They became immortal. That even today, a young child is remembered still. Every child from there. There is a young boy in Karbala by the name of Abdullah ibn Junada. He's 11 years old. His father is the companion of Imam al-Hussein, and his mother is also present in Karbala. His father goes out and is killed in the battle. Now Abdullah ibn Junada, he comes to Imam al-Hussein and he says, Yabna Rasulillah, 11 years old. Says to the Imam, says, Yabna Rasulillah, give me permission to go out and fight. Imam says to him, your father has just gone. Go be with your mother. she'll be upset at this time. Go stay with her, make her heart at ease. He looks at the Imam and says, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, my mother has sent me. Says, it is my mother that has sent me towards you. Imam al-Hussein says that in that case, then go out and fight. This child, look at his ma'rifah. Every single person that went out into Karbala, all of them rode out and they introduced themselves. This young boy, he rides out into the battlefield, 11 years old. Everyone's waiting. How will he introduce himself? Who will he say who he is? He rides out reciting his war poem. He says, Amiri Hussein ونعم الأمير سرور فؤاد البشير النذير علي وفاطمة والدا وهل تعلمون له بالنذير. He says, if you want to know who I am, then Amiri Hussein ونعم الأمير, that my Amir is Hussein, and what a great master he is. If you want to know who Hussein is, his mother and his father are Zahra and Ali, and there is no greater pride than this in this world. Abdullah ibn Junada rides out, he fights, they attack him, they sever his head from his body. This is, most of the shuhada had their head severed after the event of Asr Ashur, but this young boy, they sever his head. At that point, when he falls from the horse, they take the head. His mother is watching the battle. They take the head and they throw the head of the child towards the mother. She picks up the head. She says, Ahlan bika ya nur aini. Oh, the light of my eyes, you have made your mother proud. She kisses the head of her child and she throws it back. She says, what we have given in the way of Abi Abdullah, we do not take back. Such individuals were there in Karbala. And the one that we remember today is that one that was forgiven by Abi Abdullah Hur. Some years ago I was reciting somewhere, and one of the awliya of Allah, he came to me on the night of Hur alayhi salam, and he said to me that he had a message for me. Who the message was from is not of any interest for now. He says, but they have said that tell Nabil that whenever he goes to recite the Masa'ib of Hur, tell the people, tell the youth especially, that in the same way that Abi Abdullah forgave Hur, if you come to the door of Hussein, he will take you by your hands and take you towards salvation. Just come to the door of Hussein. Hur on the night of Ashura is seen in a state of turmoil. They say to him, Hur, if anyone had asked us who the bravest warrior was in this army, we would have said it was you. But you in this state, what is wrong with you? Hur says, I see myself between heaven and hell. They didn't understand what Hur meant. But as the Fajr of the day of Ashura drew near, Hur took his son and he made his way towards Imam al-Hussein. They say Hur tied his hands like a prisoner. He blindfolded himself and he hung his shoes around his neck, and he told his son that you take me towards Abi Abdullah in this state like a prisoner goes to Hussein, for I am the reason for why Hussein is here today. On the other side, Imam al-Hussein in his tent, he turns to Abbas. He says, Abbas, stand up, let us go. He says, Mawla, where? He says, Abbas, one of my guests is coming. He says, one of my guests is coming. Abbas alayhi salam, Ali Akbar and Imam al-Hussein make their way. From the other side, Hur comes. Hur with his head lowered in front of Abi Abdullah. Ya ibn Rasulullah, I am the reason for why you are here. I am the reason for the causing fear in the hearts of the daughters of Ali and Batul. Ya ibn Rasulullah, Halli min tawbah. Is there any way that I can be forgiven? Imam al-Hussein looks towards him. He says, Ya Hur, irfa' ra'sak. Hur, raise your head. Now that you have come to Hussein, all is forgiven. Hur alayhi salam comes towards Imam al-Hussein's tent. The battle begins. Soon Hur comes to Imam al-Hussein, says, Ya ibn Rasulullah, I want my son to go out and fight. Imam gives his son permission. His son rides out and fights, is killed. Hur runs forward towards the body of the son. Imam al-Hussein grabs hold of him. Says, Hur, no. It's very difficult for a father to go to the body of his son. Hur, you stay back. I will go and bring you to the body of your son. Oh, Hur, how lucky you were. Just in a few short hours, you'll see that Hussein will go to the body of his own Ali Akbar. And in what state? Crawling on the ground, calling, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. Soon Hur comes to ask for permission. Ya Rasulullah, give me permission to go out and fight. He rides out to fight. Hur fights bravely until he is struck upon his head. The wound from his head destabilizes him from the horse and he falls to the ground. He calls out, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Imam al-Hussein rushes to the body of Hur. Hur lying on the ground, his forehead injured. Imam takes the head of Hur in his lap. Imam begins to wipe away the blood. He takes a handkerchief that belonged to his mother Zahra and he ties it to the head of Hur. And then he speaks to him. He says, Hur, what a beautiful name your mother gave you. For surely you are Hur in this dunya and in the akhirah. The last thing Hur sees in this world is the blessed face of Imam al-Hussein, his head in the lap of Abi Abdullah. I say, Hur, how lucky you were that your wound of the head was tended to by Imam al-Hussein. But Hur, come and look when Hussein is all alone. Who is there to tend to the wound of Hussein? Hussein wrapped a handkerchief on the wound of your forehead. But look at the time, Yasir Ashur. Hussein sat up on his horse to take a breath. One mal'oon threw a stone at the head of Abi Abdullah. The blood began to pour. Imam al-Hussein lifted his shirt to wipe away the blood from his forehead. Karbala, seeing the blessed chest of Hussein, he fired a three-headed poisoned arrow into the chest of Imam al-Hussein. An arrow that's head came out from the back of the Imam. The Imam reached behind his back. He pulled the arrow. A fountain of blood gushed forward. The Imam pulled out, Bismillah wa billah wa ala millati Rasulillah. Ala la'natullah ala al-qawm al-zalimin. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, for the sake of these tears in our eyes, Ya Allah, forgive our sins. Ya Allah, forgive the sins of our parents. Ya Allah, those of our parents that are alive, give them long lives. Those of our parents that have left this world, give them a place next to Ali Muhammad in Jannah. Ya Allah, forgive those sins of ours that stop tears from falling from our eyes for Abi Abdullah. Ya Allah, give us tawfiq to go on the ziyarat of Imam al-Hussein this year and every year. Ya Allah, those that are ill, give them shifa'ah. Those that are in debt, clear their debts. Ya Allah, keep safety azadar of Sayyid al-Shuhada wherever in the world they may be. Ya Allah, hasten the reappearance of Yusuf al-Zahra and allow us to be amongst his true muntadhireen, his true awaiters, Matam Hussein.